Hello, hello. Welcome back to Temple of Holy Beard. I'm Pastor Dave. Thanks for tuning in. This video is an update to the previous video that I made on how do you like your gas prices. Um, in the previous video, I had informed you that early speculations OPEC Plus was scheduled to meet on Wednesday, which was yesterday, to discuss their oil production and the future of their oil production. They get together periodically. The last time they got together was about 2 years ago. Probably due to COVID and whatever else was going on, they hadn't been able to get together. But when they do, is they discuss how they're going to continue pumping, how much oil they're going to pull out, and they keep in mind the market of gas prices, oil prices in different places. Now, historically, they try to maintain a reasonable price so that they can pay for their own operations, but at the same time, not milk us dry at the pump. Typically, when we're not driving very much or we're not using as much oil, we're not making as many petroleum-based products, they will reduce supply so that they're not flooding the market and so that companies don't have huge reserves that they have to maintain. If they pump it, they've got to ship it somewhere. So they don't want to pump it if there's nowhere for it to go. Typically, when the market is in high demand or prices are high, they'll pump a little bit more to kind of help us out. Well, coming into yesterday's meeting, a couple days ahead of time, there were insiders. There were stories that were coming out speculating that OPEC Plus would decrease production by about 500,000 barrels per day. That's 500,000 barrels per day. Now, I have not been able to find how much they're actually pumping, so I don't know what percentage that is. But on the world scale, 500,000 barrels per day will make a difference. But from what I can see, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. Basically, gas prices would go up a little bit. But then as we got closer to Wednesday, estimates were coming out. And again, I don't know if these were for insiders that are part of OPEC Plus or if they're from market speculators or what. I don't know where these numbers are coming from. But as we got closer into Wednesday, the estimate was actually 1,000,000 barrels per day. And so the market was freaking out. Analysts were freaking out. Hey, if they decrease by 1,000,000 barrels per day, that's going to be a big hit. That will drive prices up more. There will be a shortage in supply. It's going to have a ripple effect that's going to affect a lot of people and a lot of companies. However, as a side note, I will say that think about Europe and the state of Europe right now. I've talked about it a little bit. But Europe, there's a huge shortage in oil coming from Russia and I believe from Turkey also due to the war in Ukraine, and a huge shortage of natural gas due to the same wars, sanctions against Russia. Russia fought back by turning down the supply, and you may not understand how that makes a difference, but many, many manufacturing plants rely on natural gas. Although, people will have you believe that we're switching to electricity, and you might believe that these plants run on electricity, but many of the power plants still run on natural gas. And many of these factories actually do power equipment and tools using natural gas, such as processing the oil. If you use synthetic oil in your vehicle, well, that's processed using natural gas. It still comes from oil. It's just like ultra refined and processed using natural gas and other methods to turn it into what it is. Same thing with many of the plastic products that you have. It all goes hand in hand. You can't turn off one thing without interrupting another thing. I will say that given the whatever OPEC decides and whatever they actually actually do may actually be buffered based on the problems in Europe. If you're in Europe, I sympathize. You have my sympathy. My heart goes out to you because it's going to be a rough winter everywhere this year. But especially in Europe when you don't have what you need just to heat your home. There are schools that are turning off their heaters to conserve so that everybody else has more available, and instead giving students blankets. They're huddled in blankets in school. Now, another method of heating comes from heating oil or off-road diesel. You might know it by that name, which is still comes from petroleum. It's refined petroleum into that form to produce heat. And we're just in the early days. This is barely the beginning of October. Winter's hardly even here. So do what you can to get yourself ready. Electric heaters is not a good alternative because there's a shortage of electricity for the same reason and other reasons. So, look for alternative methods. I'll do videos in the futures of alternative heating methods. But I digress. Let's move on. So OPEC got together yesterday. You may have already heard some of this information, and they did not decide to decrease by 500,000 barrels. That might make you feel good. They did not decide to decrease by 1 million barrels. However, they did agree to decrease by 2 million barrels. 2 million barrels. More than quadruple, 4 times what the original estimates were, more than double what the estimates were going into it. They decided to decrease by 2 million barrels. Now, 2 million barrels is a lot of oil, but again, if we take into account, I don't know what the percentage is overall, and then we take into account some areas that just can't get it. They can't refine their oil into other forms because of another reason. So a lot of factories across Europe are being shut down. So for the countries that are not shut down, you may not experience as much of an impact as you think, although typically gas prices are more based on speculation than reality, at least in the beginning. So you can expect the gas prices to go up, and they've already gone up significantly in the last week, depending on the area. Some areas have gone up more, some areas have gone up less. But look out for that. Look for ways that you can conserve. Like I said, carpool, walk, bike, whatever you can. Try to do your shopping on your way home from work rather than going out again on the weekend. Just a suggestion. But moving on. So 2 million barrels is gonna hit the market here soon. And what we don't know also is if that agreement includes the option of each individual corporation to also make their own adjustments in addition to that. So basically, this 2 million barrels is the minimum that OPEC has agreed on to reduce. Now, already, it's been going on for a while now. Saudi Arabia, all these countries had a quota, essentially, of how much oil they were going to produce. But Saudi Arabia was already below that. They were already, I think it was 200,000 barrels per day that they were below what they said they were going to pump, which some analysts say is due to the fact that they are running low on oil. There just isn't as much oil in the ground under that country, so they're wanting to ration it, which makes sense. I mean, if your only real means of producing money is dwindling, you do what you can. Thankfully, in the United States, and I'm sure other countries also have what we call in the U.S. a strategic petroleum reserve. And essentially that is a savings account of oil that's gotten set aside over the years. And it's set aside over the years to help the market buffer from shortages of oil and disruption. And I'm going to read a little bit. This comes from energy.gov. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve is the world's largest supply of emergency crude oil. It was established to reduce the impact of disruptions in supplies of petroleum products, to carry out obligations of the United States under the International Energy Program. The federally owned oil stocks are stored in huge underground salt caves at 4 sites along the coastline of the Gulf of Mexico. The sheer size of the SPR makes it a significant deterrent to oil import cutoffs and a key tool in foreign policy. Like I said, I'll repeat that. It says The sheer size makes it a significant deterrent to oil import cutoffs and a key tool for foreign policy. Now, that deterrent for oil cutoffs is only going to work as long as there's oil in there. I'll get into that in a minute. But this has been used different times in the past to help buffer from, again, foreign impacts as well as domestic impacts. And I'll read on. This comes from cga.ct.gov, which I believe is Connecticut State Government website. It says, in 1985, Congress authorized the Department of Energy to conduct a 1.1 million barrel drawdown to test the SPR's mechanical systems and DOE's process for selling oil by competitive bid. The sale was announced in November 1985, and the last deliveries were made in January 1986. Okay, so that's one time that it's been tapped. Get into a little bit of numbers here before I move on. Just a moment. SPR's capacity is around 714 million barrels. So them pulling out 1.1 million is nothing. A second release from the SPR took place in fall of 1990, shortly after Iraq invaded Kuwait. Now, if you don't know, Kuwait is another oil producer, as is Iraq. And part of the invasion of Iraq, somebody, I don't believe it's official who, somebody lit Iraq's oil fields on fire. So soldiers going through, Kuwait's oil fields. Soldiers going through Kuwait were actually making their way through a rain of oil coming down from these fires that were burning the oil and putting it up in the air. Of course, contaminating the entire desert, but also burning up any oil supplies that may have been able to be sent to either country, any country, because it just wasn't there. This release in 1990, which was initiated to test the drawdown and the provision of the Sales Act, resulted in the sale of approximately 4 million barrels to 11 firms. Now again, the total supply of 714 million, the total capacity, I don't know how much was in the tanks at the time, but out of 714 million barrels, 4 million is nothing. Another time, President Bush authorized an emergency release on January 16, 1991, in response to a plan to sell 33.75 million barrels. Between the initial authorization and the final sale, world oil supplies and prices stabilized, and the DOE reduced the sales to 17.3 million barrels rather than the 33.75. So not as much were drawn out that time. Another time, DOE exchanged oils 3 times before our current releases that I'll get into in a minute. One time in May 1996, it provided 900,000 barrels to a company called ARCO after one of its pipelines became blocked. ARCO returned the oil and paid the premium in November of 1996. So ARCO is an American company. Its pipeline got blocked. It couldn't move oil. So the Department of Energy helped them out by giving them 900,000 barrels in May of 1996. And they returned that same amount plus paid, the dollar amount that they agreed to by November. So it was only a few months that 900,000 barrels was missing. Then in 1998 to 1999, DOE exchanged 11 million barrels in exchange for 8.5 million of a higher quality barrel. I don't know what companies that was to, or Matt. I don't know why they did that, but they did it. Also in June of 2000, DOE supplied 500,000 barrels apiece to Conoco and Citgo when access to their Louisiana refineries was blocked by an accident there. The companies returned the same amount of oil in June and July of the same year. So it was only missing for a short period of time, a total of 1 million barrels. again, is not a whole lot out of the supply, but it was to help out American supply because American companies were impacted by something. So just like your savings account, when something happens, you pull from it, use it for its intended purpose, and then pay that back to yourself as soon as you possibly can to make sure that you still have that in reserve. Additional releases were authorized by Congress, ordered non-emergency sales in 1996 to provide funds for the federal government, totaling 28.1 million barrels in 1996. Well, that's a lot. Um, okay, so a little bit something from NationalGeographic.com talking about Strategic Petroleum Reserve, prompted by. Okay, this is how it was started. It was started by a crippling oil embargo in the 1970s. The U.S. created the world's largest oil preserve, but in a world shifting to renewables to combat climate change, the future is uncertain. In late 1973, the world was just beginning to feel the fallout of the Yom Kippur War between Israel and Egypt and Syria. To punish the United States and other Western nations for supporting Israel during the war, the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, that's the original name of OPEC, cut off oil supplies, which tripled the price of imported crude oil. By November 28th, November 25th, the crisis had grown so dire that President Nixon addressed the nation, asking citizens to lower their thermostats in the winter and refrain from driving on Sundays, go easy on the Christmas lights to help reduce electrical usage and energy usage. Now, the same thing is happening right now in Europe, and we need to do the same thing in the U.S. to help get ahead of this, but nobody's saying it in the U.S. And a couple of people is not going to do anything except help your own cost. But we need everybody to help out. In years that followed that, the U.S. pursued a policy of energy independence to protect it from crisis in the futures. One of the new policies was the creation of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. This says the capacity was 227 million, though my research said its capacity is 214. I'm sorry, 700. 727 is what its capacity supposedly was, according to National Geographic. But what I was finding from DepartmentOfEnergy.gov was 714. Most recently, the U.S. said it released 30 million barrels to energy companies after Russia, one of the top world's producers of oil, once again invaded Ukraine in late February 2022. Coordinated with world powers, the release was intended to stabilize volatile world markets and ultimately reduce gas prices that were skyrocketing amid fears of a shortfall. But many environmental advocates arguing that relying on Strategic Petroleum Reserve to manage shortages is only a stopgap measure. In light of the looming crisis, they argue the U.S. should end its dependence on fossil fuels and pivot to green energy sources instead, which unfortunately could be a long-term goal, but it's not feasible to any intelligent person in the short term, although that's the way they're going anyway. Again, that's a lot of babbling to say that it's been tapped into quite a few times. It's always been shortages. However, here more recently, President Joe Biden has authorized the release of more oil. At one point, it was 1 million barrels per day for a maximum of 30 million barrels. However, it's been authorized a few times, and I wasn't able to find the total amounts authorized the entire time. Okay, so according to rpc.senate.gov, by July 29, 2022, the SPR had reached its lowest level since 1985. Oops, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so talking about capacity. Like I said, according to the U.S. Department of Energy at energy.gov, the total capacity is 714 million barrels per day. From what I can see, the typical level historically has been around 640 to 660 million barrels. So the U.S.'s emergency storage savings account for oil, 640 to 660 million barrels, and that's enough. It's designed to help the United States through short-term crises. I was only able to track that back about 5 years because the website I was looking at wanted me to pay money to go back further, and I wasn't going to do that. So again, it didn't give me an estimate. I wasn't able to get that information, so I kind of gleaned that based on what I was able to see. Now that's that's prior to mid 2021. That was the rough average. Okay, so giving you some numbers, January 3rd, 2020, the total level, the level in the strategic oil preserve was 664.97 million barrels. That's 93.1% of capacity. So it wasn't full, but it was pretty full. Okay, it was pretty close to being full. January 3rd, 2020. Okay, on January 1st, 2021, that level had dropped to 638.09 million barrels, which was 89.4% of capacity, down 3.7% compared to a year prior. So still pretty full. Not full, but pretty full. And I don't know what was drawn from that. I don't have that information. But by fall of 2021, or in fall of 2021, President Biden directed the first of several releases of oil, which, side note, it didn't have any noticeable impact on gas prices. Phillips 66. Now the interesting thing here, I'm going to tell you, this oil, as I said earlier, is designed to support the United States. Then there are some contracted obligations to help other companies when they're in dire straits as well. So the United States, of course, is the helper for the entire world. So we have contracts in there to help them. So again, this fall 2021 release, part of that, Phillips 66 sent about 470,000 barrels to a city in Italy called Trieste. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Where there's a pipeline that sends oil to refineries in Central Europe. So again, gleaning from that, it looks like this oil was probably to help Italy, which was also having shortages, but it could have been sent to Europe to help out with their shortages. And this was prior to their refineries and corporations really getting shut down because of the natural gas shortage. Another shipment was sent to France. Atlantic Trading and Marketing, which is a French company, exported about 1,120,000 barrels to France. We don't know where it went or what it was for, but they bought it and they took it. So 1.12 million barrels was sent to France. Other shipments went to the Netherlands, a refinery in Italy, and at least one went to China. I'm not going to get into that one. At least 3 more shipments went to Europe. Now, I'm sure that I don't have information about all of these foreign shipments, and I don't have information about where all of the domestic shipments went, but just to let you know, some of this was going to other countries to fulfill obligations, and some of them just, I don't know why it went, but it did. Now, October 2021, the total, the level in the reserve. Like I said, fall of 2021 is when the shipments were released, were authorized. And then by October 2021, the level was at 617.77 million, roughly 100 million barrels low. That was at 86.5% capacity, which was down 2.9% since the year prior, or 6.6% since January 1st, 2020. That may not sound like much, and it's really not. But stick with me here. September 30th, 2022, just a couple days ago, the level in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is at 416.4 million barrels. That is 58.3% of capacity. So that's almost half of its capacity. It's down 32.7%, or 201.37 million barrels from a year ago. Or a way to look at it is 34.8%, and 323.3 million barrels since January 2020. So estimate, you look at it since these releases started in fall of 2021, the capacity is down to almost half. And so again, now President Biden has authorized to sell another 10 million barrels. Now 10 million barrels compared to 714 is not that much. 10 million barrels compared to 416 is a higher percentage. Though they said they wouldn't yesterday, Tuesday, the White House said they wouldn't even consider releasing any more oil on Tuesday. Then yesterday, Wednesday, President Biden said that he was going to sell another 10 million barrels. So we're getting conflicting information in there. We don't know. We have this reserve, this savings account that is there to buffer the country and our friend countries in times of crisis. And right now it's almost at half capacity, and he's already said he's going to give away more. So with OPEC decreasing production, which is going to raise costs at a time when our reserve is already almost half, what's going to happen when the crisis continues? What's going to happen when the next crisis hits? Now, again, one thought coming out is it's going to help out gas prices because OPEC's going to reduce it. Gas prices are going to go up, so this 10 million barrels is going to help. It didn't help last time when he released 30 million barrels. How's it going to help this time? And again, I don't have the total time, but yeah, I mean, a lot of oil has been released, and it hasn't helped prices. What has helped prices was people not using as much, us not exporting as much, and us not importing as much. That's what helped prices. Now, this emergency backup is being used to help prop up the economy and lessen the impact of policies that intentionally and significantly decreased domestic supply and increased our dependence on foreign supplies. Increased our dependence on foreign supplies at a time when they're decreasing foreign supplies. What do you think is going to happen when it runs out? What do you think is going to happen the next time they decrease? What will happen the next time a disruption happens? Gas prices are already moving back up before they decided to cut it, and there's no release in sight. And if you're paying attention here, there's a war looming on 2 continents right now, which is just going to disrupt it more, just going to increase the amount that we're going to need. So think about that. We are dependent on oil right now in a time when the oil supply is dwindling for various reasons. So the intelligent thing to do is to try to protect yourself and your family by decreasing your dependence in any way that you can. I know it's limited. I'm going to do videos in the future to kind of give you some ideas, but don't wait for me. Do your own research. Come up with your own ideas. As long as it's out there, I say keep living your life. Keep living your life. Don't stop what you're doing. But make adjustments. Start educating yourself on things that you can do when it's not available, when it runs out, when it runs low. He said, I'll be doing some videos to help out, but there's a lot of good videos on YouTube already. If you don't feel like reading the websites that are out there that have ideas. So don't wait for me. Get yourself going. If you're local, you know me, I'm more than happy to talk about it. I'd love to do a video with you about it, discussing it. But there's a lot going on that's impacting our current way of life. And I foresee, and Holy Beard has been telling me for a while, but if you look around you, you can see it coming. There's disruptions that are here. Teotihuacan, if you saw that video. Teotihuacan. We've already lived through a couple of them. There's another big one coming. It's coming soon, and the train's picking up speed. So, do what you can to situate yourself to be in the best situation that you can. Buy some extra blankets, keep those in the house. Learn about ways that you can help insulate on the cheap, because money's short and it's going to get shorter. Prices are going to go up. Even if you think your salary's good, prices are going to go up, which is going to, decrease what you have available, decrease your spending power. So situate yourself now and start moving in a direction to situate yourself better in the future. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. I hate to sound doom and gloom. This is just to educate you of things that are out there. I hope you stuck with me. If you stuck with me, this video is getting long. I don't like getting this long, but there's a lot of good information that needed to get out. This is stuff that you need to know. Don't let this stress you. I'm telling you this before it hits, so you can prepare yourself, you can learn, and get ahead of it before it happens. If you had toilet paper on the shelf before the toilet paper craze hit, then your stress level should have been significantly lower than the next person. This is a time where you can do the same thing. So get ahead of it. Prepare for a cold winter. Get yourself nice thick jackets. Get yourself an extra couple of sweatshirts. Right now it's available. That stuff is on sale in a lot of places. And your money's still going to buy it before prices go up. It's not gonna be as affordable as it is now. So do what you can. Learn, get ahead of the curve, get ahead of the next guy. Again, I'm Pastor Dave from Temple of the Holy Beard. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with me through all this. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and if you haven't done so already, hit the notification button to all so you can stay informed. I'm Pastor Dave from Temple of the Holy Beard. Stay safe, stay sane, keep learning. Thanks for watching.